There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly live stream. We have a really cool guest on today. He's a very good friend. He's one of the most professional people I know in this industry. And if you have any questions about anything that has anything to do with video, man, I'm telling you, this is like the guy you want to talk to. So first and foremost, I just wanted to mention a couple of things and get a little bit of homework out of the way. Just kind of a little bit of I'm going to switch our screens here. I'm going to get a little bit of our business out of the way. Real quick, just to let everybody know, this broadcast, we do have a sponsor, and that is StreamYard. So if you're doing anything with live streaming, if you're doing any online broadcasting, interviews, anything like that, kind of like what we're doing today, you definitely want to check them out. They're a subscription-based service, but they are absolutely amazing, easy to use, easy to set up. And, you know, when we first got going, it was like such a struggle to really figure out how to start doing interviews online. And these guys make it so easy, and was just an absolute, they're a wonderful company to work with. And that is StreamYard. For more information on how you can take advantage of the special offers that they offer to do this, just go to streaming.CorporatePhotographers.com, and they can totally catch you up on all the information on that. And by the way, our new website is finally finished. I've been talking about this for a while. And after months of procrastination and behind the scenes work, we actually have our website up now. It's finally done. And we're going to be putting a little bit more spit and polish on it really soon. But our website, CorporatePhotographers.com, is now live. And also is our YouTube channel, which is how many people find us. And to get there, all you have to do is on the homepage on our website, you just click on the little YouTube button right at the top there. And that's going to take you right over to our YouTube channel. And please like and subscribe there. That obviously helps our channel a lot. And you also get notifications for all the different times that our broadcasts are happening. So to do that, all you have to do is move your mouse right over there, click the subscribe button, and it's real important to click that little notification bell, and that will help with getting notices and whatnot for when we are doing our live stream. So very, very cool stuff. So I'm going to switch back over here. And so, yeah, so our guest today, he is he's the guy that we use for all of our heavy lifting video work. So for those of you who know us a little bit, I do shoot some video, and primarily my focus is still photography, and I do a lot of video work as well, and has managed all our live streaming programs and other things. But for the really heavy lifting, when companies call us and they say, listen, we need the absolute highest quality, the best recordings, you know, the highest level of professionalism, there's only one person we contact, and that is my dear friend, Matt McColl. I'm going to bring him on right now. Now that I've boosted his ego a little bit. How you doing, Matt? How are you?
Wow, that was mic drop.
Yeah, right. So
I'm not comfortable with any of that, but thank you.
Well, you know, and I want to talk a little bit about that because there's been some exciting news about you this past week, which is really cool. But, you know, it's like, but it's all true, right? So, you know, when we have companies like Expedia, which is one of our regular clients, I know we've had you work in conjunction with them many times, and, you know, with a lot of their top executives and different things like that, not to mention shooting a lot of their events. And so different things like that. They're a wonderful bunch of people to work with. I'm sure you would agree. Neat bunch of.
They're awesome.
Yeah. So we have. I'll just kind of preface everything. We have some news with you. Tell us a little bit about what just the awards you just got this past week. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So after 13 years of doing this, you know, kind of working for myself primarily. And I won 3 Telly Awards, national Telly Awards, 3 different categories dealing with corporate communications, one for a music video, really, really varied stuff. Huge honor. I was blown away that we
Yeah, tell everybody what a Telly is. I mean, most people are familiar with Oscars and Emmys, and I mean, I know what it is, obviously, but a lot of people watching may not.
Yeah, so Telly Award is kind of it's a video industry, kind of a PR focused. It doesn't have to be for broadcast, right? Mm-hmm. So it's any type of video they've been expanding the cateteries like you wouldn't believe. You know, there's hundreds of them.
Oh, really? I didn't know they got that big. No kidding, really. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, you know, they have a company of the year. CBS Interactive won that for the 2nd year in a row this year. Okay. But it's, you know, you're competing against the very best people in the country. that are working, and and that's why it's a huge honor. It's a super big validation of the quality of our work.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's sort of like, I mean, everybody, like I said, is familiar with Emmys or for actors, in movies, and then Emmys for television, so forth. This is something more, and they even have some awards within those for, everything from special effects to cinematography and all that. But this is more the behind the camera kind of stuff, and that's what really those awards are for. So
Absolutely.
I think it's really, I think it's really cool that you got that, man. And you have, and I know I'm tooting your own horn. You have, speaking of Emmys, right? So I know you have a couple of those too, and a lot of people that don't know about that much. You got that back when you were working in news broadcast, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and mostly for investigative journalism, long stories that we probably don't want to bore anybody watching with today. But yes, we parents love hardware, right? Yeah, I've always felt like with awards, like the validation piece of it is very cool. And it makes you feel good. Apart from that, if it doesn't get me more clients or make my current clients happier, then what's the point?
Right. No, I totally agree with you. I think for certain things in industry, it helps because it makes what you do look important because somebody else other than you validated it.
Right.
At the end of the day, the validation for me is when, we bring in another Fortune 500 company who's willing to trust us to handle their media. To me, that's as important or more so than any trophy.
No question.
And that to me is much more significant. And yet at the same time, look, I mean, it's nice to be able to get some accolades too. When you deserve it, you deserve it. So so that's kind of cool. How long have you been shooting video, Matt? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh goodness, I mean, professionally since 1996,
which is about when I started too. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. In an amateur fashion since high school. I was
same here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I got the bug. Bellingham High School, Bellingham, Washington, was at the time very forward thinking in creating a video production program. And we had a public access show. We had once a week, 30 minutes to fill. And the drama teacher was the guy that oversaw the whole thing. And he was like, go, here's cameras, go, I'll teach you the basics. And we just ran around like idiots and had a blast. And I knew then that this is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. I started in a very similar way. My experience in video started with still photography. And so, same story. I shot in high school. When I was in college, I shot for the UNLV newspaper. But I started young too. My dad was an amateur photographer. I always had a camera in my hand. When I was really young, I remember his first camera that he used was the first one that I learned on was a Canon AE1, which is like 70s technology, And but it was back in film, and so I loved it, and I got into shooting when I was a kid. Always had a camera, and so had lots of questions growing up. And then I started professionally in same time as you, mid 90s, and doing photo and video, but mostly photos. I got some training for video back then too, but yeah, definitely it's my background was stills while yours was video. So yeah, that's kind of what made you get into a professional? How did that happen? What was your first gig?
Before I answer that, I'm going to prove to you that I've been shooting stills longer than you, and also prove that I'm wearing pants. Hopefully, there you go.
Yeah, I was going to joke. I made that joke.
I'm getting a photo off of the wall of my office. That is me trying to get the glare here.
Yeah.
That's tough. There it is. That's me at age 5 taking a picture.
Whoa, that's
there you go.
Man.
There you go.
That's cool.
So professionally, I went to University of Washington in Seattle, and communications program, and just kept doing it. And my first job, I worked for a sketch comedy show up there, which was great. And then I helped launch Northwest Cable News in Seattle, which is a regional cable network. And from there, I moved to Las Vegas to run the video team, the photojournalism team at the NBC affiliate here. And, they say a local TV, you get paid in experiences, right?
Yeah, no kidding, right? It's like Disney, same thing, yeah.
Yeah, and so I eventually started a company after I grew weary of being paid in experiences. And been kind of on my own for 13 years now.
That's awesome. And so what, when you first started shooting professionally, I mean, on your own, what were some of the kind of projects that you were working on? How did that start?
Wow. My very first client was my first two clients, actually. I don't really remember which one came first, but they were two hotels. The Flamingo, they had just done a remodel. They were calling it their Go Rooms on the top couple of floors that were super, at the time, very, very kind of edgy. And so we did kind of a branding portfolio videos for them for that. And then I also did all of the video for the Four Seasons there.
Really?
So
Cool.
which was a great client to
get.
And that's, it's all who you know, right? It wasn't because I was the most awesome guy in the world. I've had a lot of luck and a lot of good relationships that have helped me over the last 13 years.
Yeah, that's very well. Yeah, and they're great. Man, what a great portfolio of clients to get like right out of the gate.
Totally.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I'm trying to think back who like my early large commercial clients were, and it was like a lot of companies that like nobody would ever have heard of. It wasn't until years later that I started actually going after larger, bigger names, and was fortunate enough to start getting clients that on that level. But yeah, for me, it was like I started kind of small and just worked my way up, but I was really tenacious about it. And I know you were kind of the same thing, as quite frankly anybody is in our business that's been doing it for a while.
Well, I couldn't even name the next 50 jobs, honestly.
Right. Well, yeah.
It was downhill from there.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's funny because, when I first made the decision to start it on my own, I would it took me a while to kind of dial it in, like what I was doing right, and especially what I was doing wrong. And, I started shooting, because I would take anything that would give me a check. Right. And so, it was like I was shooting weddings, I was shooting bar mitzvahs. And then, the next day I'm doing a, commercial shoot for an industrial, appliance company or, whatever. Right. And so, it took me a while to kind of start to think about it. And I was like, maybe I need to refine this a little bit. And the more I started looking into our industry, I was like, you know what? There are people that are really doing well when they specialize in very specific things. There are people that are really good at shooting weddings. And I'm really good at shooting weddings, but then I realized I don't like shooting weddings. I really don't. I mean, nothing against shooting wedding photographers. I just prefer not to do it. And so I made a decision one day and said, you know what? I'm just not going to shoot weddings anymore.
Yeah.
And so
family only.
Yeah, well, even that to a degree, right? But it's like charge your family. Always
no cousins.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's sometimes as you start to get focus on it a little bit, you start to realize, and even in your doing more video, I'm sure you came to the same conclusion. There are some people that are specialists in certain fields, and you just want to target a very special area, right?
No
and
question.
and so a lot of the corporate jobs that we get, I've been talking about this as we've been doing this live stream. We've been talking about some of the odd and interesting jobs that we get. And, people always, first thing I always do when I get it every time is people ask me, so what do you do for a living? I say, I'm a photographer. And they're like, oh, every time. Oh, you shoot weddings? I swear to you, it's the first thing people go to.
Sure.
And I say, no, matter of fact, I don't. And I just shoot primarily corporate and commercial, And people look at me and they're like, God, that sounds so boring. And I'm like, you have no idea. Like, people really, truly have no idea what we do. And a lot of these events that we do that can be really crazy. I mean, really nutty. What are some of over the years you've been doing this? I mean, we could share stories all day, but what are a couple of the interesting shoots you've done, at some of the hotels or some of the corporate jobs you've done? What are a couple interesting things you've seen over the years?
Wow. I mean, the really wild stuff, happened during my career in television news.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh,
that's the crazy stuff. I was afraid for my life a couple of months ago while on a project for Facebook in Golden Valley, Arizona. I don't know if you know where that is. But,
I actually do know where that is. Yeah. Okay.
That's freaky. It's freaky that you know that.
I traveled out through. So how in the world did you wind up in a gig there? Like, what's that?
Well, you wouldn't think that Kingman has bedroom communities, but it's how kind of out there it is. We were doing a piece for Facebook's Community Voices program, where they're basically trying to draw attention to the good things that Facebook groups have contributed to, you know. And so there's a network of volunteers in Golden Valley that they pick up. They're retired people primarily, senior citizens, and they pick up trash on the side of the road in the desert, and they keep the whole area clean. And there's a lot of it. And so we had just gotten into, I don't want to say town, but we were driving down this dirt road, and we found this. We were with a guy, one of the guys, members of the group, and he took us to what we thought was public property or government-owned property, right. And we're starting to shoot some cleanup stuff, and this pickup truck rolled up on us, and it was like something out of a movie. There's the grandpa behind the wheel. His three grandsons.
Guys with shotguns, or
exactly three guys with shotguns in the bed of the pickup truck.
Holy moly!
And you know they pop up, roll right up on us. What the are you doing here? You know, and pointing guns at us. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was their beef? What, you know, like, I mean, picking up.
It was his land. It was his land, and he was, you know, it was an old guy, and you know, I think he was embarrassed that we were there. Probably we were miscommunication for sure, and they were just like, "Nah, get out of here." We tried to pay him a little bit of money to continue to shoot there, and he was like, "No, go."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was freaky.
You know, I'm thinking back. It's like, yeah, wow. I don't even know what to say to that. So, okay, wow, that was just a couple months ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Has the video been published online yet, or have you done?
Thanks, Facebook. The video is not actually for public consumption. So it's, a lot of what I do ends up being an internal type of situation.
We do a ton of that stuff. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah. In fact, you and I worked on a project. I'm not going to name the name of the client because they're a very good client of ours and we like them. but you're laughing because you know what it is. So we have a large client, and we're going to have to share because we shared in this very mutual bizarre experience. So we had a client one time, if you remember, it was last year, and so they're a large company, international company, and so they decided that they were going to have an event in Vegas. And it was a conference for, how many people would you say was there? About 500?
Yeah.
Yeah, give or take. So they hired us. Specifically, we sent Matt out to go shoot this thing. And we had a multi-person crew. I mean, this was not a small job. This was a big gig. And they hired us to shoot de-incentivizing videos, which when they explained it to us, we're like, wait, you want us to do what? And I hear your dog's back.
Apologies. If you want to mute me while you're here, let me mute myself for a second.
There you go. Matt had to warn me earlier. He said his wife would come home and his dogs would go crazy. But yeah, I can totally relate. So the job that we had, they basically told us, they said, we want you guys to shoot, like, I think it was 3 or 4 days of a conference, and all the video has to be really, really boring. Like, we want it to look totally unexciting. And I remember we were having conferences and we're like, well, how would he do that? I mean, not that it's like, I mean, like, who asked for that, right? And how do we shoot something and make it look boring? And the concept was that essentially they were having this event in Vegas, and they had people all over the world, and a lot of people wanted to come, and some were invited and some weren't. And so what wound up happening was there was this sentiment that they were hearing where people were like, well, they're just going to Vegas to party, and we don't need to be there. It's not important. And, screw all those guys. And so they were having us come in and do all this video work to produce a whole series of videos to show the entire company that, yeah, we weren't going out there. It wasn't nightclubs and bars and restaurants. I mean, we came here to learn and study, and it was all instructors and education, and that was it, right? I mean,
totally.
Yeah, it was that. So yeah, imagine that being actually brought into shoot an event where you were told it's uninteresting. So,
and you just filled the exact amount of time I needed to spare people from a completely insane basset hound. He has crippling separation anxiety.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I get it. You have a German Shepherd too. Does he bark at all too, or no?
Yeah. She's a project as well. Yeah.
They are.
We like the hard cases around here.
You and me both. So, yeah, but I mean, how crazy was that, right? I mean, tell me, have you ever been booked to shoot something that we were told, like, go, you know? I mean,
No, it was a complete. It was a mind bending experience because 99 times out of 100 we go out and we're trying to make things look more awesome than they actually
right.
are.
That's true.
And we can with some little tricks and some fancy editing. We can make your conference look like a bunch of
it was
rock
like
stars.
Yeah, right. That's our goal, really. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so this was the opposite of that, and it was a really weird thing to even just get our heads around.
Yeah. And and a lot of times these things are internal. And the reason I brought that up was because you said you shoot a lot of stuff that was that kind of job that nobody
would
ever see that.
All of it, yeah.
And so we get a lot of those kind of things. We shoot for a cybersecurity conference, and same thing. We have to pass FBI background checks for that. It's really strange. But yeah, that's all internal too, and we don't know what half this footage gets used for, but they use it for something. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a lot of times that happens. But yeah, make the footage look boring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if you run into this a lot. We get booked a lot to shoot this. And this comes down to editing, right? Because here's the deal. In spite of being who you are and what you shoot, it's also half the work is not what we put in camera. It's the editing after the fact. It's all the post production. And to be really effective at what we do, you kind of have to have both those skills. It's not. I mean, sometimes you can get away with one, but in a lot of it, it's we're kind of one-man operations to a degree, right? And we have to shoot. I don't know if you run into this a lot. We shoot a lot of events where the footage is used twice, but for different reasons. So
sure.
Like we'll shoot, and so you have to, when you're shooting, you have to keep in mind, I've got to be able to use this for two completely different purposes. So like, for example, we shoot conferences a lot of times where we'll produce videos that go out to all of the attendees, like a big conference. Mm-hmm. And then and so that goes public, like on their website. And then we use the same footage and put it to new music and different feel and different pace and different, mixed in with some other footage that might just go out strictly for the exhibitors. So we might use like 80% of the same footage to go to exhibitors versus the attendees, but how it's all edited gets totally different.
Absolutely.
We have on the website actually, but yeah.
I was actually an editor before I was a shooter.
Oh, really?
And that is so helpful to, like a huge part.
Same here, actually, yeah.
Is you got to start with the finished product and what that's supposed to look like, and then that informs you the decisions that you make when you're on set. And it was the best thing for me as a shooter today, as I sit here years and years later, to start just editing.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a really good piece of advice if anybody's listening to that. So I feel the same way. When I started editing. Before I kind of did some video, but I understood the process of editing long before I started shooting. I cut my teeth video editing. You're gonna love this on a video toaster. So back in yeah, right. Yeah, holy moly, that was like back in 1990, right?
Yeah.
Take 1990, 91. So yeah, I used to do a lot of stuff for Commodore back in the day, and
nice.
So I grew up with. I actually used to moderate Amiga forums, and I was really active in a lot of the Commodore stuff back pre-World Wide Web. And so I knew all those new tech guys. I used to work with them a ton, and they're still around, interestingly enough. They're actually big into a lot of live streaming stuff now. They've kind of gotten into that field to a degree.
I think we're all going to be in the coming years.
No kidding, right? But
right?
Yeah, so I started doing a lot of understanding how video, and that was linear editing back then because we were doing
yes,
multi-tape decks and stuff. Yeah. And so I started, and then back in the 90s when I started working in a lot of video, I kind of started learning hardcore by some really good trainers that a company I was working for provided, and I started working on Avid. This is back in '97. And so, when they were still pretty young, and a lot of proprietary equipment, and nonlinear editing was really new. And, it was cool. It was a cool time to learn. But, but you're right. So like when I shoot video, and I don't know if you do the same thing, and I'm not trying to sound like egotistical, but when I shoot, and I kind of do stills the same way, is I reverse engineer everything that I'm doing while I'm doing it. So I kind of get a vision in my head of what the finished output's going to be. And then I just figure out as I'm doing it, how to get to that destination while I'm shooting. So a lot of times, I might think, all right, we got to do components from here and here and here, and we're going to assemble it all, and we're going to make it look ta-da like that. And so as I'm at a conference or we're shooting an event or a party or whatever, I just know in my head, all right, I got to get shots of that. I got to get somebody things as speakers. We got to get some stuff at the party or somebody getting an award, and then, it gets put together. Because there's a lot of times I have clients that'll ask me while I'm on a shoot, why aren't you shooting this? We got this thing going on. Why aren't you shooting it? I go, there's no reason to. And they're like, why? And because I've got something that will be better in the slot that we would normally use that for. We already got that, or things like that. So
that's when your client skills come into play, and you have to gently tell them, I got this. For me, in that situation, you're telling a story, right? Every video that you create, you're telling a story. And people tend to remember the beginning and the ending of any interaction.
Right.
That's a social conversation, a phone call. Anytime you, like a movie, you remember the beginning, you remember the end. The middle tends to get a little hazy.
Right.
And, down the road. So those are the things when I'm on set, I'm thinking, how are we going to start this thing? How are we going to end it? And then when I'm editing, same thing. I usually start with the end. Like, because you can do that now, right?
Right.
I get my ending done first, and then I go back and I do my very beginning, and then I fill everything in the middle.
That's a good idea. That's actually pretty brilliant advice. That's a really good way of looking at things. Yeah. Oh, that's very clever. I kind of do things more, I lay it down in chunks and then kind of assemble it to get to some kind of like a middle of the road. But you're right. It reminds me of one of the guys who mentored me years ago on public speaking and stuff. His name's Chuck Barnes, one of the nicest people in the world. He does a lot of coaching for people on time management and things. The guy's amazing. And one of the things he always says is whenever you do any kind of a presentation, he said, the very last thing that you say is the thing that's going to stick in their heads.
Absolutely.
As the memory of the event. So when you're walking off, let's say, a stage, and you say, you talk about for an hour about whatever it is you're talking about, the important message of blah, blah, blah. And you say, all right, everybody, hey, good night, drive safe or something like that, right? Well, that doesn't, when they walk away and they're telling somebody about this presentation they saw, they're going to walk away with a fuzziness about what they remember. Because as you said, and I agree with you, is they tend to think of that middle of the road because that's the meat of the presentation. And that tends to be the fuzzy part. But when you leave them with a really strong impact, and that is the reason why you need to do this and this and this and this and this, and that will change your life forever, and that's how you end it. You hit them with those bullet points, and that's what triggers the memory of the entire thing.
For sure.
So it's a brilliant observation you have. That's interesting. And what's funny is that whenever I go through footage, I kind of go through, whenever I'm looking at clips, when I'm editing, because when I shoot, I know I stop rolling right when I know I've got something. I might get a little bit extra footage or something after, especially with B-roll. So my trick whenever I do editing is whenever I load up a clip, I always look at the very end, like minute first, because I know, generally speaking, that's about where I know I got the best stuff.
That's where the good stuff is, yeah. I can't claim that as my own, by the way. I stole that from a client who is also a public speaker, and he does this exercise where he reads off to his audience a list of like 12 baking spices, right? And then he's like, okay, who remembered it? And they raise their hands, and they only remember the first couple and the last couple.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Little psychological thing. Yeah, that's kind of
totally
cool. So of the speakers that you shoot and all the different things that you shoot, what are some of like the, I've forgotten more shoots than I've done than most people will ever know. But there are always those things that like kind of stick in your head that you go, that was really cool, or there was like a takeaway, or something really interesting that you walked away from. What have you ever had anything like that where you just thought like that was really cool? That was a privilege to shoot something like that.
Wow.
I know I'm throwing you like these are not like
no. When you talk about, so there's two things. You started by asking the speakers and stuff, and so I started thinking about that guy I was just talking about, and the lesson I learned from that guy briefly is limit clients to 2 rounds of revisions before they.
That's true. Right, yeah.
I got to version 53 on a video with this guy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we put it in our contracts actually. Yeah, I'm sure you.
Yeah. Well, I do now. but no. In terms of
but
memorable things,
the most expensive lessons, right? The best lessons are the most expensive ones, right? So
for sure. But I have a client who's a nerve surgeon, and I've shot many surgeries with him. And there's one woman in particular that I've been kind of following around for off and on for the last couple of years, and super inspirational. That she's been told by many people that she's never going to walk, she's never going to be able to do all these things. And this guy he's one of 2 people in the world that do these specific surgeries, and he's completely changed her life. And so to have that little access, that little window to, and that's anything really, like all of what we do. Like today, I was at the Venetian. They're getting ready to reopen in 2 days. Right. Nobody in there except for employees. So weird to see it, because that's not how we ever see it.
That's got to be really strange, yeah.
But what a neat, what a privilege to be a part of that and helping them tell their story of like, look, it's safe to come back here. Here's why. So there's like everything. Every shoot is really, you're getting a free ticket to something that 99% of people would never get to go see or do.
You're right. I came to an interesting kind of epiphany for myself years ago. We shoot a lot of events that would probably, by most people's definition, be considered kind of boring, right?
Sure.
We shoot a lot of conferences that are, we did a conference one time for a group, and it was some sort of like sales tracking software. Again, I don't want to kind of name their name, but I'm not trying to say anything derogatory. And they're actually a really nice bunch of people. But they make this software, and it is very technical, and it is for a very specific industry. And so they actually put a pretty nice event on. It's a beautiful, they get a nice ballroom. They decor it really well. It's a cool little event for maybe 200 people. And the speakers, it was all like, every speaker that was on stage was, and they were all monotone. It was kind of like the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Ben Stein. Like every one of their speakers was like that. He was all monotone, never moved, never ventured away from their podium. And every topic was like, I'm here to talk about the integration of the SQL database into the event management system of our new linear software management system, which is now online via the access of the XQY portal. I mean, it was like 2 hours of that, right, for one guy. And, we're kind of wandering around the room because they hire us to take photos and video. And, we see people like drawing dragons in their notebook and stuff, But, the thing you got to realize is that while that may seem to me to be, what probably a lot of people can be very considered boring and unexciting and uninspirational, in the context of those people attending there, that's their livelihood. And that's how their little sliver of the world creates something that is designed to solve a problem for somebody else, or help somebody else, or make somebody's life easier, or build a business, or do something. And that's why they do what they do. And so, when you sit here and you go, God, this stuff is so boring, at the end of the day, you got to realize this is an important industry to somebody. And so, when you start,
that's a great point.
And when you start to understand that that's how all businesses, generally speaking, operate, and there's so much stuff that goes behind the scenes of any operation for putting stuff in your house or in your business, or, a little component that goes in your car or whatever, somebody has to make that. And so when you start to realize that every little thing sometimes has a level of importance to somebody. And so as long as you kind of keep that perspective a little bit, I think it makes what we do more, more important to a lot of people,
Well, and also, like, it'll make you get up for that shoot, right? Like,
right, yeah.
I'm bringing, this might not be that interesting to me personally, but I know how important it is to you. Right. And I'm going to crush it because it's important to you.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, we shoot a lot of things where, I think there are some things that we shoot which are like, not that great for a variety of reasons. Like, for example, we were hired once. This was actually our company's first big shoot where we had multiple photographers. Our first large scale shoot as a company. We got brought in to shoot for a large, and we're talking very famous cigar company. And did I ever tell you, I don't know if I ever told you this story. But we got brought in to shoot this thing, and we were told, oh yeah, it's just going to be like a party and then a banquet, and pretty simple really. And we're going to have some people. We want photos with a step and repeat backdrop outside for people to come in, but it's going to be a black tie affair, so it's going to be pretty formal, a couple hundred people, but just a cocktail reception and a dinner. Okay. And they said we'll have some entertainers and a couple awards on a stage, but that's about it. All right. Well, we walked into this event, and the first thing, and it was at the Venetian at the Sands Expo, and it was during, I think it was the Big Smoke. It was a big smoke expo. So they had to put some photos of the booth, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I don't know how they either let them do it or how they let them clear the room out. But we walked into the Sands Expo, and it was right after the show was closing, and it was like looking into downtown Los Angeles the level of smog that was in the layer. It was a layer across the entire ballroom. I've never seen anything like this giant convention center. And, walking in the room, and I got a humidor right behind me. I smoke cigars, right? Most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. So we go into the party, and what they had was servers pushing carts around with these massive humidors full of, each one had probably 200 or 300 cigars in it. And it was just free for the taking. So everybody's in like suit, old money people, tuxedos, women in evening gowns, the whole thing. But it was like everybody's walking around just grabbing handfuls of cigars, and they're nonstop smoking. So we're in this room, and everybody in there is smoking, and they're like, I'm not kidding. They would take like their cigar would get down to a nub, and then they'd light the next cigar with the
chain smoking cigars.
Yeah. And so I've got photos. I'll post them somewhere, but we have photos of, and so, we couldn't breathe, right? So we had to take breaks walking out of the room. Our cameras have haze schmutz all over the front. I'm using a little Yiddish here. Schmutz all over the front of the lens because of all the smoke. We go into the banquet room, and it was just more of the same. But there we have pictures of people cutting their, it was like a steak and lobster kind of thing, and they're cutting their steak with a cigar in there.
Sure.
It was just nuts,
My first year.
Yeah, that was like our hazard. Holy.
My
crap.
first year in Vegas, there was an assignment editor at the TV station who was a huge cigar smoker, and I had never really smoked cigars before. And he basically, long story short, he sent me to the Big Smoke just to get him a bunch of cigars.
Really?
He's like, yeah, bring your camera, shoot some stuff. And they're all handing out their stuff. And so I was there for 2 hours, and I brought back this guy 8 pounds of premium cigars.
It's and I'm sure you do this too. At all these different expos. I mean, my gosh, there's so much. It seems like it's kind of getting away from that a little bit. I mean, I used to go to some of these things and just get so much stuff. I mean, the giveaways and
the swag quotient has gone down over the years for sure.
There was one that we shot last year that was pretty cool, and it was for an event called NAMA. It was basically I'm trying to explain what they do exactly. They are a convenience store food / vending machine type expo, and it's a pretty big event. I mean, it's a large expo, and nice bunch of people, and so it's all like super high tech vending machine technology that they demo, but it's also like special kind of refrigeration systems but it's mostly revolves around the convenience store industry to a degree. And oh man, let me tell you, the swag at that thing was like unreal. And holy cow, I remember the person we were shooting for on the last day, she's like, we were wrapping up about an hour early, and she's like, I'm going to give you a little piece of advice. She goes, I go, what's that? She goes, grab a bag. She goes, I'm going to do that right now myself. She goes, grab a bag and just hit the floor, because now while everybody's leaving, and they'll give you tons of stuff anyways, but just go get as much as you stuff. I know you're tired, and we've been walking the show floor for 3 days straight. We're pretty wiped out. But she's like, just go fill up a bag full of stuff. And I go, all right. And I'm not joking, man. I came home, it was like overflowing with candy and beef jerky and soda.
There you go.
Just off the hook, Yeah. So, sometimes there's some of these shows that actually focus on that, but it's pretty rare.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get, as much as I'd like to be able to go home with like a big screen TV at CES, that's not really something that's going to happen very often, But yeah, no, the swag of some of these shows can be kind of cool. I don't know if you know this. There used to be a thing years ago. It was either Comdex or CES. It was one of the two of those. And they Brother, the typewriter company, now they make not just typewriters, but they have printers and whatnot. So they used to be a big sponsor of the U.S. Olympic table tennis team. So they used to have this thing set up in their booth. They had a ping pong table in their booth. And they had these kids that were like aspiring Olympiads for the next Olympics that were in training. And we're talking like 14, 15-year-old kids, maybe younger. And if you could beat them at a game of ping pong to 11, they gave you a laser printer. It was and it was cool. And they had them all stacked up. Well, the thing was so
did
great
anybody beat them?
Very rarely. So at the end of the event, I mean, literally they brought enough to, just in case, but they would just give them away at the end because nobody would beat these kids. And so it was great just observing this. And I got some great video footage. So I got to go dig it up somewhere of people walking up, and there'd be a line, and you got some people that knew how to play the game that'd be, walk up, a little chip on their shoulder, and they'd sit at the table, and these little kids would size them up, and they'd be like, I'll spot you 10 points. And they're like, okay. And they just get creamed, It's just awesome to watch.
Great.
Great. Yeah. It's just phenomenal, where these kids are just look at it and you're like, oh man, I'm just going to clean your clock, But, it's funny. And like I said, at the end of the thing, they couldn't give all the printers away because nobody would beat these kids. So it was pretty clever.
The ink is where the money is.
That's true, right? Man, I think we all know that by now, right? Yeah, holy mackerel. Haven't they said that I think they weighed it out and like by the ounce or pound, like ink is worth more than actual liquid gold is. So by the ounce, it's like.
That's why I print everything in gold.
Hey, there you go. Save money, right? The financial tip for everybody.
I'm always thinking.
What are some of the other things that you've done? Like, any interesting conferences that you shot that were kind of cool, or what else are some things that you've done over the last couple of years?
Boy, the conference game to me is never like, this conference is great. No, I did shoot a taser conference once.
Okay. Did they do live demos of that, or?
Oh yeah, they hooked up 50 people. And they all had them join arms. They clipped one guy on the end, and they clipped the other guy on the other end, and they pulled the trigger on this thing, and they all went down. It was awesome.
Like a giant human circuit.
Yeah. That's awesome. That was pretty neat.
Well, some of the commercial jobs that you've done, I mean, what are some of the clients and some of the projects you've worked on for that? Because you have some interesting, I mean, a lot of the jobs you do commercially are pretty cool, too.
Oh, man.
You've got some for different hotels in Vegas here. I mean,
All of them. Yeah. All of them. I mentioned I was at the Venetian today. I do a lot of stuff for them. I do a lot of stuff at the Cosmopolitan. They have for
Cosmo too. Yeah,
they have a very cool initiative. They celebrate it once a year, but they do it all the time, where they're really trying to hire veterans, and they have hundreds and hundreds of veterans working there now as a result of their initiative. They've been nationally recognized for it. So that's a very cool thing to be a part of, for sure. Do a lot of stuff for the MGM properties as well. Mm-hmm. Did the launch for here's a funny story for you, Adam, that I've never told you. Okay. So the opening of T-Mobile Arena was a few years ago now, but they had they had one night that was like a pre-opening thing that was really cool. They did it so MGM employees could bring their families and check it out for the first time. And then the next night it was the Killers played, local band, very famous. You've probably done the business end of your camera before.
Oh no, I love the Killers. Yeah, no, they're great.
So
they have a whole show for them over on the Fremont Street Experience now. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So we're in the green room before the show. And I'm talking to Ronnie, who's the guitar player, and also, he's like, him and Brandon are kind of the main driving force behind the band. I'm doing this 15-minute long interview with him, and I feel just great about it. I'm loving it. He's in a great mood. We're getting great stuff. I'm asking pretty good questions, if I do say so myself. And we get it. We're done. And turn the camera off. I shake his hand. I said, "Thanks, man. That was great." He goes, "Really?" Because I have no idea what I just said, because your fly is down and I've been staring at it for the last 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Oh, yeah. That's kind of interesting. All right. We've done interviews with a lot of famous people and celebrities and stuff where it's like, they sound like, I mean, really, like they give it their all, and you walk away and you're like, oh, that was really good. And they're like, oh, I'm so glad you liked it. And I go, why? They go, oh, because I basically just said the exact same thing that I said in an interview 15 minutes ago, And, sometimes you can tell when people phone it in. Sometimes, really good professionals and they,
Yeah.
they pull it off well, So, yeah, no, that's it flies down. Nice.
Yeah. Way to go, champ.
Yeah. Have you ever shot anything with God, man, I'm trying to think of all the stories times I've shot, done photos where, or video too. You don't have a card in the camera or, weird, God almighty, all the horror stories I can think of.
Yeah. So when Mike Tyson got his boxing license suspended, now I'm revealing how old I am. This is an old story.
Yeah.
We went to the athletic commissioner's home to get an interview. It was like on deadline. This whole thing had just happened. His name was Dr. Elias Ghanem. It was a long time ago. So I'm with the sports guy, pull up at his house, get in the back of the car, get everything out. I don't have my camera batteries.
And it's not like, I'm sure most people realize it's not like something you can go to Walmart and buy
No.
Right.
No. That just cost you an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Because of the trip to go back home. Yeah.
So I now, because of that, I'm scarred for life. I almost did it this morning because in the morning I get up, I get all my gear together, load it up. I'm drinking coffee. Got up pretty early. And I'm like, did I put the batteries in the car? And I've pulled over to double check before.
I've done that honestly done that. Here, and again, we talked about this earlier. The biggest lessons in life are usually the most painful or the most expensive. And I've had
sometimes both.
Sometimes both. I did a shoot for Hayes, the nightclub, when it first opened. It was on their opening night. And I get down to the nightclub and I've got my camera bag and the whole thing. And this is like a nightclub, right? So other than your camera, the second most important thing that you need in your camera bag when you're shooting a nightclub is your flash. And I forgot it. And so it's, 1 o'clock in the morning, midnight, I'm rolling into a shoot and I don't have a flash. So I'm thinking, well, what do I do? I could go home. I could do, but we got to start shooting soon because there was something happening that night. And so I had to call my wife and wake her up at midnight and say, I need you to run a flash over to the Aria. It was like, oh man, so yeah, but so, you learn these things a couple times. So now I have a clipboard in my office of everything that goes on every single shoot. And I just check it off. I have a printed out spreadsheet of every piece of gear I've got. And whenever I have a shoot booked, I just check it all off and it goes on to that. And it's my checklist. So it's all what needs to go in the bag and what's actually packed. And it doesn't get checked off as packed until it's in the bag,
Yeah.
I've had, so many times I double, triple, quadruple check calendars. We use a CRM system for managing our clients, which allows us to really stay focused on track. But back before I had that technology in place, I was using Google Calendar or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember, and this, oh man. So I'm going to share with you the biggest disaster I have ever had in my career, right? And this was regarding Adrienne Angela, who we actually interviewed as one of our photographers. Adrienne. We interviewed her a couple weeks back. This involved her. I should have talked about this story when I had her on. So I booked, this is back when I was shooting weddings. Adrienne and I go way back. And I got booked for a wedding. And I think this was like in that transition period where I'm like, I don't want to shoot him anymore. But a client was like, they were paying me well, but it sounded like a really cool wedding to shoot. It was at the Neon Boneyard. And I'm like, I'm going to take that job. That actually, normally I would have farmed it out. And I'm going to take it because that's to be cool shoot, So I did it. And so I booked it and it was like 6 months out, they booked me, right? So about 2 or 3 weeks after they booked me, they called me up and they said there was a conflict with the scheduling. We have to move the wedding shoot up 2 weeks. No problem. Okay. So, and they're like, yeah, calendar's clear. No problem. We're good to go. And this is like 6 months out, right? I forget to update my calendar. So the week of their wedding, my wife and I, on like a moment's notice, because we were annual pass holders, we're like, let's go to Disneyland. And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So we go to Disneyland, and I'm not joking. I'm standing in line at the Matterhorn when my phone rings. And, I'm like on vacation. Normally I wouldn't even answer it, but I'm like, that number looks familiar. And I pick it up. She's like, hey, Adam, it's the bride. And she's like, hey, Adam, we're just checking in. It's like, 45 minutes for the wedding. We just want to know what time you're going to show up. And I'm like, wedding? I'm like, who is this? And she tells me, and I'm like, I said, I'm like going in line in my head, right? I'm like, let me call you right back. So I look at my calendar and I'm like, and then it hits me. I'm like, oh my God, this is the week of their wedding. I mean, it's like, I literally, I tell my wife, we get out of line and I'm literally like having a mild panic attack. And I'm like, I'm going to ruin these people's wedding. I'm like, this is the worst thing I could possibly do. And I call her up and I'm trying to think in my head, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I call her up and I said, I can't remember her name. Nice, very nice one. I call her up and I said, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to make up some stupid story. I'm not going to have an excuse. I said, I know you changed the date in the calendar. I screwed up royally, and I'm going to figure out a way to make it up to you. Give me 10 minutes. I'm going to get a photographer down there. I don't know what I'm going to do. Just give me 10 minutes, and I'm going to call you back. And she's like, okay. And she was calm about it. And I called every photographer in Vegas that I know. I'm like, and this is like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a morning wedding. And I'm blowing up everybody's phone. And it was like 11 o'clock. It doesn't matter, but it was a morning wedding. And I'm blowing everybody's phone up. And I'm thinking, oh, wait, Adrian shoots weddings. And I call her up. And I'm like, please answer, please answer, please answer. And she does. I said, I've got a mega favor to ask. She's like, what's up? I said, I don't know if this is even possible because she lives kind of out near me, which is about 20 minutes away from the location. And I said, we've got this wedding. I got this wedding. I screwed it all up. Is there any way, are you home? And she normally keeps her gear at her studio. And I'm thinking it's in the morning. She's not going to be there. So I'm like, is there any way, I don't know if you have a camera. I don't know what we can do, but is there any way you can grab a camera? And I explained to her the problem. She goes, well, you are in luck, my friend. I go, what? She goes, I was just having breakfast with my father and I was picking up my camera gear at the studio to do something with it. And because I had to shoot that night, she goes, I have all my gear in my car and I'm 5 minutes from there. I'm like, she was leaving her studio, which isn't far. And I go, you got to be, she's like, have no worry. You're covered. We'll straighten all the money out, whatever it is. I'll take care. I said,
friend for life.
Oh my God. So she did it. And she shot the wedding. They loved her because everybody loves Adrian and they loved her. She did a phenomenal job. The photos were absolutely incredible. And we did this. And so I, called her up. I paid her. Well, I think I even paid her more than they paid me. I was like, whatever it is, you're getting everything.
Well, the real question is, how was the Matterhorn?
Well, that was, yeah. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But the other thing was I was such, first of all, the entire day I was in a panic over this. But, once the client after the wedding, they called me and they were cool. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get like a -50 review on Yelp or, they call me up. They're like, you know what? These things happen. It's totally okay. You handle it like a professional. And Adrian was wonderful, and we're real happy with everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are the nicest, greatest people. And to make it up to them, I gave them like a free photo album. I custom made this great photo album for them and sent it to them. They were living in Hawaii. And so I really want to make sure I took good care of them because it was 100% my screw up, And yeah, the Matterhorn was great. Once I calmed down and I realized everything was under control, yeah. But for like a good hour, man, that was a pretty stressful hour, Holy moly, yeah. So it's like forgetting your battery, you got to go shoot Tyson. But yeah, this is a wedding, It was like
makes you better. Makes you
but,
better.
Honestly, it really truly does. And I'm not. Look, I hope any aspiring photographer, anybody in this industry or any business for that matter, never has to go through this. But it's like one of those things you learn, and it's a strong lesson on how to do things right and how to not screw stuff up. And that's what makes you. That's what wisdom really is, right? It's just learning from experience. And as long as you learn from it and don't make the same mistake again, or something close to it, then yeah, that's what learning's about, right?
For sure.
And and that's one of the things we talk to our clients a lot about is the wisdom of this industry is there's a lot of guys out there. You and I talk about this a little bit too, as far as I remember we had conversations about camera equipment and other things, and the new latest greatest whatevers. And one of the things I find interesting is you meet a lot of very young, especially in video. You meet a lot of really these young 19-year-old kids that are, got some decent gear and are really good eyes for shooting and very creative attitudes. And, they're that young go-get-'em kind of people that we kind of once were, right? And it's really, really cool to see. But at the end of the day, when we're dealing with the kind of professionals that you and I work with, they kind of tend to like us older guys a little bit. And it's mostly just because we have experience from figuring out all the solutions to the potential problems that normally come up. That when you're 20, you just don't have the knowledge or experience on to do,
No question. No question.
So,
There's lots of guys that have a ton of talent. Gear is getting more and more affordable all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you know, there should be young people doing younger, I should say. I'm not, you know, us old guys. I'm not.
No,
ready for that yet.
I'm like that. Yeah, but,
47, dude. Come on.
Yeah. I'm gonna be 50 this year.
Yeah, boy. I bet you're going to Disneyland too. Yeah, I know how that goes.
Assuming they're open.
Yeah, but so, you know, sure. Can you? I mean, your gear is probably not quite the level of ours, but it's good enough. Your eye probably pretty good. It's good enough. Right. But yeah, like you said, there's number one, client skills, dealing with people. I've never met, you know, a 20-year-old that will inspire confidence in, you know, these Fortune 500 companies. Right. But I mean, it's how we're, come be on my crew, sure, but don't talk to anybody. Right. You know, yeah, you can't fake experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I hear.
And that's because we've screwed up so much and learned from those mistakes. Honest
to God, right? So yeah, I mean, like, yeah. What, okay, you got to share one more good one with me. We're going to wrap up. What was like another major, one big disaster on your part? There's got to be a fun one in there.
You just with disaster?
Yeah, come on.
Okay, I got one. But I don't feel as bad about it as I did a year ago. And you'll see why in a minute.
Sometimes that happens too, yeah.
So I was hired by South Beach Entertainment, the company that owned the SLS, mm-hmm. to document the taking down of the Sahara sign when it was, wow. You know, originally it was the Sahara, right?
Yeah.
And it was a day-long project, and they were like, this is a huge moment in Las Vegas history. You're the only camera that is going to be here to capture this. So I was like, awesome, let's do it. So go down there, do the full day shoot, all of that. Here's another lesson that every videographer will learn someday. Label your cards. And you know, I burned over the card before I put it into I reformatted it before I copied it.
We actually have an official procedure in place for copying and dumping. Yeah.
Well, I do too now. So that footage went away. It went away. They obviously never called me again. I take some tiny solace in the fact that it's called the Sahara again. So.
Right.
Well,
you know, we had a similar circumstance. We were doing a big shoot. I don't know if you were on this one or not. I don't recall. We were doing a shoot where we had all of our cards after we left the shoot were pickpocketed. So somebody actually stole them. I don't know if I ever told you. They were pickpocketed from me. And they later turned up. Hotel security found it the next day. Client was in an absolute panic. And what happened was we dumped all the cards on site. Or everybody gave me their cards is what it was. And I was going to go home and copy them and then just give everybody their cards back the next day. And big mistake. And so now we have a procedure in place where on site we copy them, we dump them onto a computer, and then we back them up externally before it ever leaves the property. So now that's standard operating procedure. Because you know, it's easy to drop it. We all know. I mean, these little cards are this big; they're the size of a postage stamp. You know, you're shooting on XQDs probably, so do we. Yep. Or you know, sometimes SDs, but they're still the same size, and they're easy to drop and lose. And so, yeah, no, it's the same thing. Now we have a procedure in place. The things are copied and backed up before they ever leave the property. Because it's just so, you know, because who are ever going to think, well, I'm going to lose a card, or you know, I'm only driving home. Or, you know, but yeah, somebody actually pickpocketed us. That thought it was a wallet probably. They got it on camera. They watched. We have it on film. The pickpocket hit me. It was a woman actually. In an elevator. While I was in the elevator, and it was at Cosmo or Aria, and yeah, she nailed me going out to the parking garage. So yeah, it was a 3-person crew, and oddly enough, Adam Shane, the other co-owner of the company here, his wife was hit by the same people 1 or 2 days earlier, and she was pickpocketed in the same place. Yeah. Yeah. She was walking out with her makeup kit and they hit her. Yeah. Crazy. And they found our card, you know, the cases we put the cards in, or, you know, like a wallet size, probably what they thought. And so they found it sitting with all the cards in it They didn't throw it away, thank God, but it was near a garbage can on the other side of the property. Security found it. We had a high alert. I got home and I realized the cards were missing. I went back to the hotel. It was like midnight. We had security roaming the entire convention center with flashlights, walking all the way out to the casino. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah,
Wow.
we were in panic mode. So now we have a procedure for it, So yeah.
Nuts.
Our industry. So listen, Matt, I know we've been on for a lot longer than I expected today, but it's always fun talking to you. It's a huge pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. We'll have this archived on YouTube, and I've been broadcasting this into your Facebook page as well. So kind of clever.
Okay.
Yeah, so very cool. You have been awesome. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. We'll be having another one of these next week with somebody else, of course, but it's been great having you on.
Won't be as good as this one, Adam.
I can assure you that is probably the case. So yeah, unless it's like, well, it will never be as good as this. So yeah. Matt,
well, thanks for bringing me on. I look forward to return to
some form of normalcy. Yeah.
Something.
We're getting there. You got booked for a job today, and we got booked one today too. So it's coming back. The balls
For
are
sure.
rolling. So yeah. So
For
now
sure.
we're just looking forward to kind of getting back into business. It's been a couple crazy few months, but I think we're starting. So yeah.
Totally.
So wish you always the best. Matt, take
You too,
care.
brother.
Thanks again. And
All right. Thanks, man. See you soon.
You bet.